Hello everyone and welcome back. I got a fun one for you today. This video is brought to you by Snapchat. I say that because this patient here is a teenager who was nice and high on Halcyon and could not put her phone down the entire procedure. She definitely messaged a bunch of people while she was high. I kept telling her not to, but she kept reaching for her phone, and finally I said, you know what, it's up to you. You could go ahead and do what you want. But she did take a lot of selfies with us at the office and asked that I record the video and post it. So if you end up seeing this, I can't say your name because of HIPAA, but this is your tooth. So here we go. As you can see, we have some caries on the mesial number 3 approximating that tooth there. Decided to go ahead and take care of this for her because it was pretty stinking deep there, and get the process started. So the filling actually looked mostly intact. It was just down at that marginal area where we had lost the seal. So starting off like normal, taking out of the bite, so we're not really worried about any fractures or anything. Moving forward here on pediatric patients like this, and I consider, pediatric anyone under 18, I'm going to be a little less aggressive taking it out of the bite because generally you want to wait until they are done with high school to get the crown done on here. So I did something a little bit different. Stick around to the end and I'll show you what we did here. But started to remove that composite. I used a combo of both the 8 round burr as well as the normal workhorse burr to get in there. You can see we dropped right into the caries there, removing a little bit more of the composite just to expose that area, give me some space. And then there was a little bit of decay right there in the central groove that I decided to take out as well. Just want to get this thing looking as clean as possible. So what I'm doing here is you'll notice I'm leaving that filling intact on the mesial. I don't believe that she's going to be getting that crown done anytime soon, and the filling is mostly okay except for that most apical part of it. So I'm going to try to actually use it and keep it there so she can buy a little more time before she needs to get a full coverage crown on here. 8 round burr to remove the rest of the decay, getting down into that area, and you'll see at the very end here, right as we drop into the chamber. Sorry for the water here, trying to get everything nice and clean, but sometimes there's a little bit of extra water there. So you can start to see right there, that's where we have that pulp exposure. Going to use the workhorse burr to start cleaning that out and get my access done. Now, at this point, I know that we have, usually on a 16-year-old, we're going to be able to find, palatal DB and MB1 right away. So I'm going to take that 2006, clean that out here, and I'm mostly going by feel at this point because there is a fair amount of bleeding. The tooth was in quite a bit of pain for her, and I'm not really concerned about the MB2 because I need to be able to see it. I'm going to still try to drop in it there, and you can see I kind of missed. So rinse it out with the Triton here, and what you will see towards the end of this is that we do not have the MB2. I'll zoom in on that here just in a second for you, but want to get that all out. In the first place, though, there is a large chunk of pulp tissue that just does not want to come out, so I ended up using my endo length spoon, pop that bad boy out. Sorry for the wiggliness there. Even with stabilization, that still is hard to see, but that's what the pulp looked like. And now we're going to go after MB2. So using that workhorse burr, I can see pretty much where it is, and I just need to trough just a tiny little bit. Mostly it's removing the dentin that's coronal to it and moving mesially, but you'll start to see that white area here. As we've talked about in the past, I like to do these dry so you can see it better, and that is what the MB2 looks like. So going to go in now with the 8C, and you can see we're already down 4 or 5 millimeters, so this is a pretty straightforward one. I like to use the rotary file here with very light action. I really want it to take me down rather than trying to force it. This is where you break files. If you try to force it at this very early stage of cleaning out the MB2, there's often these crazy S-curves and other things that you need to straighten out in order to get access to the apical portion of the tooth, and you will more than likely separate the file if you push too hard. So lots of rinsing here as well. You do not want to compact debris. You do not want to hold yourself out, and go back in now with the 2006. And the reason we're doing this and going back again is because it removes a little more coronal tooth structure, and that's where we're often going to have those curves that make it very difficult to access the apical third of the canal. So at this point, pretty straightforward. We're going to get ready to go ahead and get our length on everything, and I would skip forward through most of this because you've all have seen it before, but working length with my 10K file, just like normal. Everything went really well as far as this, so don't need to, belabor and stick through it. So we're gonna go through the process now that everyone wants to see, which is how to deal with this MB2. And we are about 2/3 of the way down as it is right now. The other canals are super straightforward, really easy, and I'm just gonna spend the rest of the time focusing on that MB2 to get that cleaned out all the way to the apex. Once again, lots and lots of rinsing here. Even at 16 years old, you can still have calcifications, and MB2s can still be difficult. The other canals are really straightforward. You'll see me sometimes jump or put the file into the other canals, and that's because if you put it down a straight canal and it heats up, it actually kind of straightens the nai back out and makes it a little bit easier to get into these areas. So if there's curves on it, put it down a straight canal, and that heat will actually, because of the shape memory, it'll flip the file back to where you need to go, and that's what we're looking like here. So you can see that there was bent up, and I put it in the other canals, and it straightens out really nicely for me there, and that's what we're doing. So getting down there, I still had a little bit more to go, so I ended up using an 8C file just to make sure we get all the way down to the apex. I think there was just a tiny little something in there because it dropped down really nicely after this. Go back in, and in this case I started with a 2006 here. I think there's a pretty decent curve on this tooth, and so you can see me brushing towards the mesial. The curve felt to me like it was curving distally, so by brushing towards the mesial with the 2006, I can coronally flare that a little bit more towards the area it needs to go, and then gain access to everything. And I think this is going to be, yeah, this is the last one as far as our cleaning process. So dropping that down there, you can see it wiggling quite a lot, but when we go into the palatal, it's a little bit more stable. So that's that trick. If you find that your martensinic, the heat-treated files, are starting to bend or get a little less stiff, put them down another canal, and the heat from that process will actually make it a lot easier to get down to where you need to go. At this point, final rinse is coming up. I think I have one more final, yeah, going down with that 2006 one more time just to make sure we got everything cleaned out, and we finally dropped right there into length. So we are going to finally do our final rinse, final rinse. You can tell that I don't write these down. I'm trying to do more scripts, actually. I'm trying to do more scripted stuff, but I did promise the patient that I would get this thing out for her, so hence why we're doing it. Now, you'll see I'm using the yellow tip. We've switched it up here, so I finally blew through my supply of the red, larger, medium-sized tips on my endo activator, and I'm now able to use the much smaller ones, which fit these new sizes that I'm using a lot better than compared to the larger red ones. So very pleased that I'm able to use those. Recapitulate with a 20K file like you've seen many times before. And because my patient is going to be watching this, I decided to show a little bit more of the squirt technique. I know it's been a minute since you've seen all these, but we're going to go canal by canal, inject, push down with the condenser, backfill with more gutta percha, and then go into the next canal. And it's just kind of a standard process. You can start off with whatever canal you want, bounce around, and the nice part about this is you want, or the key thing to remember here is you want to make sure that this is very hot and that you have soft gutta percha, because if you try to use a medium or a hard gutta percha, even at 230 degrees, it still isn't going to flow like you want. You need to have soft gutta percha, and you need to make sure you have sealer all the way to the apex. So that was my little side note there. Clean out the sealer as we've done before with isopropyl alcohol, scrub the chamber. Looking really nice here. Pleased with how this thing turned out. And I did go back down with the PAC-MAC. She didn't have really any apical findings, so I'm not worried about being too aggressive here. I just want to make sure we don't have any voids or any other issues that might be calling it. I did skip the palatal just because that was a much larger canal. You'll see the difference in the final x-ray in terms of the size. And we're going to finally now clean out the rest of that filling material. What I'm doing here is just brushing, and I'm trying to only remove composite to make it so that I have a nice strong surface apically of dentin to bond to, while still retaining enough composite that she can function with this for, you know, a couple years. That's all this really needs to last, is a couple years. So we're going to start the bonding process like you've seen before. BioClear disclosing solution, just see if there's any remaining biofilm in there, rinse that off, and you can see it's not too bad. Sorry for the spray here, but you can, this is the BioClear blaster as you've seen many times before, and then we go in with our etch to do our bonding process. So rinsing it all out, you will see here in a second, I got some still photos to show you what things look like. Obviously the, you know, beautiful frosted prettiness of the blasted solution plus the etch is one of my favorite things, but this is what I really wanted to show you. That small little gap where the red is, that's her gingiva, that's the opening, and I'm okay actually using that almost as a like a matrix band pretty much, because it is going to seal that up very nicely when the Build It goes in there. Build It doesn't compress like amalgam, so I'm not worried about pushing it out. Even with packable composite, you're not really going to get a ton out of that area, and when you look at the final, it looks really nice. So after we light cure that we are going to polish it. I did some of this off camera with the rubber dam off, but get most of that out, use the barrel burr just to remove any sharp spots here, and you can see how there's that thin layer of composite that I left on there. That's on purpose because she's not getting a crown for a while. It looks really solid here. I'm pleased with how this turns out. And when you look at the x-ray, you can see there's no excess composite being shoved out the end of the tooth. It still looks great. Very pleased with how that all turned out. This is a trick if you have younger patients who need to buy a couple years. If you can salvage the existing restoration, that is a great way to save them some time and money of not having to do it. And you don't have to put a matrix band and go through that whole process if you don't want to. Also, look at that x-ray. Gotta love the split there on the MBs, and really pleased with how everything turned out. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you're my patient, thank you especially for making us all smile with the Snapchats. If you have any questions, please drop them below. Otherwise, I will see you next time.